Let's say goodbye with a smiley.
Meow. Love the colours in here this time of day. Oopal's Cat. Free America, a good channel, challenged me personally about 2 to 3 weeks ago to actually do a video response on what I believe the meaning of freedom is. Because he's actually interested in what a lefty Canadian's take would be on freedom. Since then he actually opened up the video to everybody else, and there's been some really good videos on it. And I've been struggling hugely to define what I mean by freedom. It's not as easy as you might think. As you see from the opening 2 slides, dynasties in politics are becoming increasingly common. The first slide, if you don't recognise it, is Pierre Elliott Trudeau's Prime Minister of Canada for an awfully long time, and is well loved in Alberta for his national energy policy. The little kid next to him is actually Justin Trudeau, who's well loved in Ontario for buying pipelines. It's interesting how things change but stay the same. And of course most Americans would recognise Bush Baby and Bush Senior. Again, another dynasty. And it's a tragedy that Jeb Bush is not now currently the President of the United States, because let's face it, oligarchy makes us strong, right? Anyway, hold on tight. This is going to be a bumpy night. Freedom is actually a word that's very well defined. Freedom generally is having an ability to act or change without constraints. A thing is free if it can change its state easily and is not constrained by its present state. Now that's all very well in the world of quantum mechanics. In the world of the human, none of us can ever be truly free. We're always going to be constrained by both external constraints, peer pressure, laws, threat of retribution. We're also going to be always constrained by internal control. Things your mummy and daddy said to you, things that you know to be self-evident. These truths we hold self-evident are only truths to you. They may not be true to another, and yet they feel self-evident truths. Now, to go to the ridiculous, obviously being owned by another human being, slavery, means that you are not free, you are constrained. But what about other terms and other forms of enslavement in modern society? Well, there's quite a few, and most of them are chains we've built ourselves. Things like debt, things like relationships, things like where you live. There's a whole bunch of things we construct in our everyday lives that actually enslave us, meaning we are rendered in a state of non-free. So in philosophy and religion, freedom is associated with having free will. Can you be free and have freedom without free will? The answer is probably not. Now, this is where it gets complicated. You can have free will and being to do what you wish without undue or unjust constraints or enslavement. Now, we can argue all night what's undue or unjust. An obvious one right now is Colin Kaepernick. Does he have the freedom to kneel during the national anthem at the NFL? Yes, he does. Does that mean that he should? That's his choice. Does it mean that you have a choice and a viewpoint on that and you're able to express it? Of course it does. That would be a way of establishing freedom. However, how free is it when the President of the United States asks your employer to fire you, and anybody that does what you do, that harms nobody, physically harms nobody, because you wish to express an opinion during the national anthem? It's an interesting question. I mean, I don't think there's any actual answer to this. My personal point of view is that you stand for everybody's national anthems, and as I've said on a few comment sections, those of you who are Yankees fans, when you come to Toronto to watch the Blue Jays beat you, can you please stand up during our anthem and shut up? Because the Yankee fans are really, really, really rude and disrespectful to Canada's anthem. And it's not a big thing. Strangely enough, the other teams that come to Toronto are actually very polite and respectful. Interesting. Is New York America? No. Is Toronto Canada? No. So those of you who believe that you have free will, I think you're deluding yourselves, but that's just my personal opinion. This is a personal opinion video. However, if you do have free will, if you are born in a state of freedom and then become enslaved, then the philosophical discourse is how to get back to the natural state of freedom. If you do not have freedom and free will when you are born, but learn to develop social and physical skills to enhance and become free, then the argument becomes a little bit different. Liberty! Liberty and freedom. They are not at all the same thing. It's a major error of conflagration in the United States that they see liberty as being freedom. It really is not, and never has been. Nor, I will argue, did the framers of the United States Constitution ever wish liberty to be mistaken for freedom. Now, right now you're all switching off, going, that crazy vegan liberal socialist in Canada. Hold on tight, I don't expect you to agree with me. I'm talking about my point of view. You might learn something. I might learn something when I read your comments. So in political discourse, political freedom is often associated with liberty and autonomy in the sense of giving oneself one's own laws and having rights and civil liberties with which to exercise them without undue interference by the state. John Stuart Mills differentiated liberty from freedom. He said freedom is primarily, if not exclusively, the ability to do as one wills and what one has the power to do, whereas liberty concerns the absence of arbitrary restraints and takes into account the rights of all involved. As such, the exercise of liberty is subject to capacity and limited by the rights of others. Now, this is a very important point for you guys who think liberty is freedom. No, no, no. Liberty is enslavement, but free to act within the enslavement. Anything that's a social or political or economic or emotional control that prevents you exercising your freedom, your free will, your free expression, but allows you to do other things, is liberty. I'm at liberty. Colin Kaepernick is at liberty to kneel during the national anthem. Colin Kaepernick is not at liberty to pull out a gun during the national anthem and start shooting the referees, or umpires, whatever you guys Americans call them. So this is really important. Liberty is absolutely linked to human subjectivity. Liberty exists within a human construct, within your brain's construct of what is right and what is wrong. You can do what is right, you cannot do what is wrong. Whereas freedom, you can do what you wish. The American Declaration of Independence, as an example, describes men, because, you know, women and black people don't exist, describes men as having liberty, and the nation, United States, the new nation, as being free. They gave the United States government freedom to do whatever they wanted to do. They constrained the United States male citizenship with very specific things they could do freely and very specific things they could not do at all. They gave them liberty, they gave Americans liberty, they did not give Americans freedom. Free will, the quality of being free from the control of fate or necessity, must first have been attributed to human will. But Newtonian physics attributes freedom, degrees of freedom, free bodies, to objects. So again, we have to be careful. No object is actually free. All objects are acting upon all other objects. Now, freedom differs from liberty as control differs from discipline. Liberty, like discipline, is linked to institutions and political parties. Whether liberal or libertarian, freedom is not linked. Although freedom can work for or against institutions, it is in no way ever bound to the institution. It will travel through unofficial networks. Social media right now is under attack from institutions. Our liberty is being constrained on YouTube. Our freedom to produce what we wish on YouTube is being constrained. YouTube is no longer free. But we do have a degree of liberty to make freedom of expression on YouTube within very strong and draconian constraints, much like being a citizen of any country. To have liberty is to be liberated from something. So this is why the American Constitution made a big deal out of liberty. They felt that they had been enslaved, treated badly by the Brits, and so to justify their unlawful rebellion and armed in civil war. Remember, it wasn't lawful until they won. It was. They said they were doing it to make liberty, to give liberty to the poor American colonialists because of the horrible, horrible British being horrible to them. Whatever, it was hundreds of years ago. One could argue both sides quite strongly and be right, as with most things. However, to be free is to be self-limiting, to be self-determining, to be utterly autonomous. Freedom cannot and will not ever exist within a state of liberty. You cannot be liberated and free. You cannot be enslaved and free. You can have liberty with freedom, but you cannot be fully free if you have liberty. You are at liberty in the United States and in Canada to do certain things. You are very much not at liberty to be free. Some political theorists have deemed it important that people may aspire to have freedom from limiting forces, such as freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom from discrimination. But descriptions of freedom and liberty generally do not invoke having liberty from anything. To the contrary, the concept of negative liberty refers to the liberty one person may have to restrict the rights of others. So you can have the power to speak, act and think as you wish without hindrance or restraint from internal or external control, and that will give you full freedom of choice. In the real world, you have limited freedom of choice and limited freedom of expression and limited freedom of action. For example, you may believe that you do not need to drive with a driver's license because you believe that for various reasons driving with a driver's license or insurance is not something that is a good thing for you to do because it restricts your freedom. You have the liberty to drive a car if you pay insurance and if you pass a driving test and you keep it up to date. You do not have any liberty to drive a car freely without being constrained by the state. Now that is done for fairly good reasons, but it becomes quite clear early on that a lot of these liberties are actually in place to constrain the population and also to be used as a form of unofficial tax revenue. This one's absolutely brilliant. Freedom. Freedom from subjection or control by foreign or domestic despotic governments. This is kind of a no-brainer. One of the major reasons for fighting World War II was to make sure that we didn't grow up in Britain speaking German and that our Jewish friends weren't killed. And we had a free press. It's interesting when you look at warfare. Warfare is not a state of practicing freedom. Warfare is done by institutions to restrict the liberty of other nations' citizens, to constrain the actions of other nations. So by engaging in military campaigns, you are actively seeking to limit the liberty and freedom of other people in other places. If they do that to you, you will fight back. They fight back, whoever wins is declared the winner, and then they set what liberties both populations can have. And warfare and terrorism are actually a great way of social control. this goes a bit beyond this video, which is going to be kind of long, but you can use liberty. You can defend the liberty, the rights of a people to restrain their liberty. So for example, because of the escalating terror threat, terror orange alert, whatever it is, you can actually justify reading my emails and reading all my text messages. I would argue that's restricting my freedom. I'm still at liberty to text and write whatever I wish to do, but knowing I do so could put me on a no-fly list or get me with a black hood over my head and fetch me up in some Middle Eastern country for 3 years being waterboarded, or even worse, having American female GIs show me their breasts. So freedom to carry a gun, freedom from having people with guns shoot me, freedom of movement without fear across borders. Freedom tends to be attached to a specific, whereas freedom in and of itself is not attached to anything. The individual human has the freedom to do whatever the individual human wishes, for good or bad. Liberty is imposed upon that individual human to restrain them from harming others or from harming the state, or to control their actions for specific reasons that may or may not benefit that individual, and may or may not benefit the state, and may or may not benefit everybody else in the country they are. The state of being free, or at liberty, rather than in confinement or under physical restraint. This is where we confuse liberty with freedom. Exemption from external control, interference, regulation, the power to determine action without restraint, political or national independence. Personal liberty as opposed to bondage or slavery. Exemption from the presence of anything specified. This freedom is usually followed by the word from. Freedom from rape. Freedom from buying Nike's garbage. The absence of or release from ties obligation. Free of debt. Ease of facility or movement of action. Frankness of manner or speech. General exemption or immunity. Absence of ceremony or reserve. A liberty taken. A particular immunity or privilege enjoyed as by a city or corporation. And corporations are now individuals, and corporations have absolute freedom within very little liberty restraints. Corporations now have much more freedom than the individual person, which should actually make everybody on the left, centre and right go, what? A civil liberty as opposed to subjection to an arbitrary or despotic government. The right to enjoy all privileges or special rights of citizenship, membership in a community, or the like. The right to frequent, enjoy or use at will. Philosophy. The power to exercise choice and make decisions without constraint from within or without. Autonomy, self-determination. However, freedom stands for something greater than just the right to act however I want to act. It also stands for securing to everyone else an equal opportunity for life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness. Everyone else, irregardless of nationality, race, colour, height. To most reasonable people, freedom means more than just being free to do whatever I want to do. For most people, freedom means liberty. It means having freedom within certain guidelines and controls to do mostly what you wish to do, providing you are not harming others. Now, I'm shaky on American constitutional law, but I believe this is how the First Amendment says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So it doesn't take anybody any amount of time to realise that the First Amendment has been trampled to death and burnt in America right now, and in every other Western country, including Canada here. I'm not getting Canada off the hook here. We don't have free assembly. We don't have free speech. We do not have a free press. We do not have the right to petition the government to address our grievances. Now, the laws respecting an establishment of religion is an interesting one. And I'm not really particularly going to go into it, other than to say the American Constitution is very clear that that is a freedom, not a liberty. Your right to have a religion and practice your religion should be absolutely free. Now, I would argue they meant white Christian, Judeo-Christian religions. I don't think the American constitutional framers foresaw that Satan worshippers would be allowed to go around slaughtering goats and small babies and virgins. So again, reasonableness would always entail freedom. It is reasonable to do it, therefore you are free amongst certain liberties to do that act. So this will be two parts. The next part will obviously be tomorrow, and the next part is going to look at the 3 laws of humanity that I've created by plagiarizing Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, and we'll come to a long-winded conclusion about what I believe freedom to mean in 2018, what freedom means for me, what freedom is and what freedom does not look like. So stay tuned, comment as ever, feel free to attack me. I'm happy with that. Au revoir.